Alright, so here we go. Tin works all off that I need to take off. It comes off really fast when you don't have all the bolts in. Like half the bolts in the fenders, like nothing attaching back here. It was all off. Ready to be pulled out now. More stuff to disconnect, but all the tins off. Short story on this. It's a 95 LT1. It was rebuilt by myself when I was like 20, and I did a terrible job, obviously, because that's why it's coming back out. It's got massive oil consumption problems by the looks of it. It's got oil coming past the rings on number 1 and number 8 back there, and that's due to my own fault. It's always been like that since I rebuilt it. I've never enjoyed this, so this is why we're doing another revamp on this truck. It's been 10 years since this all got put in, but this was bone stock LT1. It lasted for a year after I built this truck, and then all of a sudden it started to knock. So I pulled it out, excited to rebuild a Chevy V8. I got a crank for it. I got 30 thou over pistons, boarded out 30 thou, put a Comp Cams 268, I think, into it, and put it back in. And then that's when I discovered there's this oil consumption problem. Have no idea what it was, and that's just what happened. In trying to figure this out, I was in a rush. I put the wrong oil filter on. I blew that oil filter off and ended up driving like an 1/8 of a mile somewhere. Or I don't remember how far I drove, but it had no oil pressure for a little bit. So I pulled it back out and checked the main bearings, checked the rod bearings, actually threw a new set of bearings all into it just for good measure and put it back together. And then it was like that. It is always belching smoke and not running right with the EFI that the engine originally came with. GM's first crack at sequential fuel injection. So I was off and on trying to figure stuff out here and there, and then eventually I was like, you know what, let's ditch this EFI. Not that I really want to, but let's ditch it. Let's put a carb on that we know is good, and that's what I did. I took just a GM aluminum intake, and I drilled the holes so that it all worked. It's really off-centered and really not right, but hey, it worked. It's sealed up there. There's a good, holes are just off-center there. And that's how it worked. And it made it better. It ran better, but not good yet, and it was still smoking like a great uncle. So that's where we kind of are now. Last year I changed the transmission and transfer case just because I had lost reverse in it. Still wanted to try to enjoy it. Put a manual shift transfer case into it, and now I am just so sick and tired of this that we're pulling it out in favor of, let's turn some light on in here, in favor for this 6-liter. It's more modern, it's nicer. I deal with this stuff more often, and it's just a higher success rate than that LT1. So once we get the transmission and everything all prepped and the new transfer case, then we'll stab this in and we'll keep on doing some instructional videos of how to. I don't think, the only exception, I don't think those stainless headers are gonna fit in this chassis. There's just not the room for it, but we'll see what happens. So we'll continue with pulling the motor out.